Thinking about food. Thinking about food.
Hello everyone, it is just me here today, Danielle, and today we're going to talk about added sugar. I think it's a fun topic coming off of Easter, where we have all those Easter eggs and candy. So what we're going to talk about is the guidelines and recommendations for our kids and how we can apply them in our families. So it's a big topic. There's a lot that goes into it, so I won't be able to cover everything in this episode, obviously. I'm going to start with a couple statements that I think we can just take a deeper look into and learn a lot from. The first one is from the American Heart Association, and it is the first ever scientific statement that recommends specific sugar limits for kids and adults, actually. So it says children and teens should consume less than 6 teaspoons of added sugar a day and drink no more than 8 ounces of sugary beverages a week. So for the adults, it would say women are recommended to consume 6 teaspoons of added sugar or less per day. And for men, it would say men should consume less than 9 teaspoons of added sugar in a day. So those kids and teens should consume less than 6 teaspoons. So very similar to the women's recommendation. So when it says added sugar, it is not talking about the natural sugar that's found in our fruit and our dairy. So the natural sugar in fruit is fructose, and the natural sugar in dairy is lactose. So we do not need to put any limits on those foods. Obviously, in dairy products such as yogurt, there is added sugar in those, and we'll talk about that. But like a cup of milk, if you look at a cup of milk, it has 12 grams of sugar in it. That is pure lactose. There is no added sugar in your milk. Same thing with like a bag of carrots. If you look on the label of a bag of carrots, it will say 5 grams of sugar. I'm sorry. So on the cup of milk, it'll say 12 grams of sugar. It doesn't say 12 grams of added sugar. I don't know if I said that or not, but it'll say 12 grams of sugar in a cup of milk, and it will say 5 grams of sugar in a serving of carrots. So those are sugars that we do not need to decrease or limit or watch. So what we can do is look at this second line on the nutrition label that says how many grams of added sugar. So it's right under the total sugars. So the total sugars includes the added sugars and the natural sugars. And the added sugar line, it says includes how many grams of added sugar. That's the one that we want to pay attention to today. So when we're thinking about what foods are going to be highest in added sugars, those are going to be your sugary drinks, such as flavored milks or sports drinks, obviously soda, lemonade, sweet tea, all those types of drinks. Sweetened breakfast. If you think about most breakfast foods, they do have a sweet taste to them in our country. So it would be like breakfast cereals have added sugar, yogurt, muffins, those types of things. We would look at the label for those. Another one is energy bars. So granola bars or protein bars or energy bars, those can have some added sugar in them. Syrups and sweets. So that would include like jams and jellies and syrups, barbecue sauce, those types of things. Frozen treats, obviously, and baked goods would also be an obvious one for added sugar. So when you look at that nutrition label, 1 teaspoon equals 4 grams. So if you look, for example, if your child is having graham crackers for a snack, so you look at the serving size, and then you look at how many grams of added sugar. So if it says 8 grams of added sugar, and you divide that by 4, that means if that child eats that same serving size, they're going to get 2 teaspoons of added sugar. So you just divide the number on the label by 4, and that's how many teaspoons are in that serving. And that's, again, if the child eats the full serving size. So that's one thing to think about is overall, where are your food choices that can be decreased in added sugar? So for example, a quick switch would be switching to unsweet applesauce versus the sweetened applesauce. The unsweet applesauce, you can still add some cinnamon. You don't really even need it though. It does taste sweet from the apple, the fructose, and the natural sugar in fruit. You can look at finding just a lower added sugar yogurt. So looking at the different brands and the labels and seeing which ones are lower in added sugar. Now with dairy, I'm a huge fan of dairy because it provides so many good things for you. Calcium, protein, some has vitamin D, some yogurts have vitamin D added. And the yogurt benefit is the probiotics. So one thing to think about as you're trying to find a yogurt that's lower in added sugar, why are we eating the yogurt? We're hopefully eating the yogurt for the probiotic benefits, as well as, like I said, calcium and protein. So still trying to balance that out. So thinking about a yogurt that maybe has 0 grams of added sugar, but only has 2 probiotics, I would prefer to choose the one that has a little bit more added sugar and more probiotic benefits. So another example is like kefir, or people call it kefir. It is a probiotic drink, and it does have added sugar because it's quite tart on its own. I think that is a huge superfood. Once again, it has vitamin D added into kefir. In some products, it has 12 probiotics, so that's really good for your GI tract. And then the calcium and protein as well. So that added sugar, it's going to go us a long way. If you think about, if you're going to, have the 6 teaspoons of added sugar or a little bit less in a day, having it coming from a food that's also giving us all these benefits instead of a dessert, you got to think about how you want to balance those sugar throughout the day. So thinking about, I'm not trying to go to 0 grams of added sugar in a day. So that's not the goal for the children either. It's not the goal for you to get 0 grams of added sugar in a day. But the goal is to thinking about the benefit of the foods that do have added sugar. Can we go less in the added sugar? Switching to a lower sugar cereal, switching to a lower sugar yogurt, but then still have the benefits of that food. Like, is the cereal still high in fiber? Is the yogurt still have probiotics in it? Maybe some vitamin D added, those types of things to consider. So I know it's hard to consider balancing all those things out, but once you do find something you like, you might stick with that. So my family does enjoy kefir. We do have 2 yogurts, 2 different yogurt brands that we buy. We kind of alternate based on one has vitamin D added, one has a little bit less sugar. So we kind of go back and forth. They both have 5 probiotics or more. So those are some things to think about when you're looking at the labels. The next statement that I think we can look at is Ellen Satter is a dietitian and family therapist that is really popular in the child nutrition realm. So one thing she says is to put a serving of dessert at each person's place. If you like dessert, let them eat it before, during, or after the meal. No seconds of dessert. So, I don't know. I started this when my kids were very young. So when my kids were maybe 2 or 3, maybe, we would have dessert with the meal. So that the benefit of that is taking that dessert off of that pedestal, making it less special, making it on equal playing ground as the other foods on your plate. So if we're always saving dessert for special occasions, it can be something really special. Now, of course, our culture is going to teach our kids that dessert is special and tastes good, or there's other foods in this world that are, put up there as well. But anyway, the point of that is to take the dessert down and make it less special. So when we maybe think of it less highly. So a child that, never gets dessert is going to think it's really way more special than a child that gets the dessert all the time, if that kind of makes sense. The second statement that Ellen Satter says is periodically offer unlimited sweets at snack time. For instance, put a plate of cookies or snack cakes out with a glass of milk and let her or him eat as many cookies as she wants. So this statement can be frightening for moms. I feel like I always was nervous that they would get sick and eat too much. But what this is doing is giving the home a practice ground. Okay, so if we always have limits on our kids while they're living with us, then it's going to be a little harder for them to know where, if they're not going to follow our limits, how far can they go when they're out of the house. So, for example, if we say one cookie, eventually one day they're going to want more than one cookie. So if they have the time to practice at home, how much their body can tolerate and how it makes them feel, then maybe they'll be more successful on their own and not feel like they need to binge these foods because they didn't have them growing up. So I think background and how you grew up is really an interesting topic within this topic. For example, I had a sweet tooth. I can actually kind of say I don't really have that sweet tooth anymore. It's really nice, obviously, not to have that sugar craving, because it helps you kind of keep your food choices that are really balanced with nutrition, and not just, pleasure. I still enjoy the foods that I'm eating for sure. But one thing to think about is, I wish I could tell you what would allow you not to have a sweet tooth. That's a big question for a lot of people. Or how can you get your kids to not have sweet tooths? I would love the answer to that question. But honestly, I feel like it might be more so decreasing the overall sweetness of your diet. And then that would come with also, like I said, taking this desserts off the special plate, the specialness of the desserts. So not restricting them too much and not being too lenient. So when Ellen Satter was talking about unlimited sweets at snack time, that's really like the practicing ground. If we were to have unlimited sweets all the time, that's not going to really set our children up for good health long term. They can obviously have higher sugar intake when that happens, so they're not going to be meeting the recommendation from the American Heart Association if sweets are unlimited. But also it's going to, I think, almost cause that sweet tooth, because overall they're going to want their foods to taste more sweet if they're having desserts all the time. So one thing to think about on top of this, well, first of all, let's summarize that a little bit. So too much restriction we want to stay away from, and too much leniency, I think we want to stay away from as well. So, you think about finding your family middle. Okay, so your family middle, are we having desserts every night? Are we having desserts 3 times a week? Are we having desserts on special occasion? Honestly, my family has done that, all 3 of those things. Like I said, I had a huge sweet tooth. Even when I had young kids, I wanted dessert every night. And so how could I not let my child have dessert every night? So obviously that quickly got changed, because they were wanting it more and more and more when we were having it every night. So it was helpful, once again, to see how the family can keep you accountable. So like, just because I wanted to make sure my children were healthy, we switched to 3 times a week for desserts. We call them dessert nights. And again, that was working for a little bit, and we did have to change a little bit because, it was hard to prepare a dessert. I mean, I don't really like a lot of packaged desserts, so I was kind of making a lot of them from scratch, and that was a little overwhelming. So, Now I think, having desserts on a special occasion, but still when you have obviously holidays in your school, summer camps, all these things that the children are at, they're getting those types of junk food or sweets or things. And it's not like you're taking away those things. Like if they have Easter candy in the house, like we're not wanting to, say you can't have that or have one piece and throw it all away. That would be really way too restrictive. So dessert on occasion is kind of what I would recommend, but finding your family middle. So like I said, if you have a huge sweet tooth, maybe we just work on decreasing that and see how good you feel and so much freedom you can get from not having those sugar cravings. So that is possible. I'm proof. I'm your hope that you can have less of a sweet tooth for sure. The second thing I was thinking about is just assessing the overall sweetness of your food choices. And that would come with practicing the reading labels. So the good news is you don't buy, new foods every time you go to the grocery store. There are many foods that you repeat on your grocery list. And so finding those snack items and yogurt and cereal that are lower in added sugar, and then seeing how your family enjoys them, and see if that does help with your kids asking for sweets or your sweet tooth. I think it can make a big difference. So another thing is to not limit the fruit or the dairy. Like I said, the fruit or the dairy is so important for overall good health. For bones in the dairy, obviously the calcium and vitamin D. And then the fruit, good for fiber and vitamins and minerals. So one thing I like to think about with this is putting the fruit up there on that pedestal a little bit. How fun would it be for dessert, to have strawberries and whipped cream? Or in the wintertime, having diced apples with cinnamon and whipped cream or something like that. So serving fruit as a dessert is a fantastic idea. You can even do like homemade yogurt parfaits where you can decrease the added sugar by choosing a lower added sugar yogurt and a lower added sugar granola, tons of fruit in there. That could also be a really special, fun dessert. So these are just some things to think about as a family. One, the difference between the added sugar and natural sugar. Don't eliminate the natural sugar. Where are the main sources of our added sugar? Those sugary drinks. One thing about those two is you'll find that some drinks, obviously have no added sugar. And what that means is they probably have sweetener if they're a sweetened beverage, such as like vitamin water or there's so many out there, honestly, those flavored waters that taste sweet, but they don't have any added sugar. So that's a sweetener that they put in there, like Splenda or stevia or something like that. That actually has a higher sweetness level than sugar. So just making sure that your kids are drinking mostly water is the most important thing with that. So thinking about not wanting us to like increase our sweet cravings just with our beverages, our sweeteners. Okay, so that's an idea to think about as well, to try to how can we drink more water that's not sweetened. Since summer is coming up, infused water. So like if you put some strawberries or oranges or limes or lemons in your water and let it sit there for a little bit, that can be a really fun treat for your kids too. My kids surprisingly love LaCroix. I don't know if you want to try that as well. It doesn't have added sugar, no sweetener. So those types of drinks is possibility if it seems special to your child. And then once again, the sweetened breakfast, take a look at those. If there's some recipe that you can find Like I like to make pumpkin muffins, and I don't use added sugar in those, or I do a little less than obviously less than the recipe calls for, and you can see how your sweetness level changes. So for example, sometimes my mom will make me banana bread and it will taste amazing, but I'll be like, wow, I can really tell that is much sweeter than my pumpkin muffins. So in general, having those lower added sugars breakfast more often. And then the snacks and syrups and sweets, thinking about those. Once again, not necessarily, we don't need to be changing to like no added sugar barbecue sauce, for example. That's going to have a sweetener. So if you want to stay away from the sweeteners, then obviously just looking for the ones that is lower in added sugar. If you feel fine with the sweeteners, you don't have it every day, for example, barbecue sauce, then yeah, that might be an option for you. So find what's right for your family for sure. And then, the baked goods or the frozen treats. So how often are you having it? Find your middle for your family. So I think that's all I have for you today is those 3 points. Find your family's middle, assess the overall sweetness of your food choices, and don't limit that dairy in the fruit. So hopefully you found this helpful today. If you have any questions, feel free to pop on over to our website and we'd be happy to help.
Thinking about food, thinking about food.